Okay guys, 10 full hats on today because this one's a doozy. Are hand cannons changing in Shadowkeep? This was a question that was brought up after the Armor 2.0 reveal stream because some of us picked up that the hand cannons looked a little different in terms of its reticle as well as what looked to be a reduction of recoil. Now the reason why I said 10 full hats on here, guys, we don't have any proof on whether or not hand cannons are actually going to receive a change. We're just making educational guesses and that's it. So bear with me. First up, let's take a real quick look at what a reticle looks like with mouse and keyboard. Now, one thing to take note of is the circle, as it's like around the crosshairs here. But when we swap to a controller, notice what happens now. The circle becomes smaller, which is now intersecting those crosshairs. Now, the reason why this is even relevant is because when we look at Tomo here, notice that his reticle looks to be similar to a mouse and keyboard's reticle. The slits are on the inside of the circle being on the outside there of those crosshairs. Now, this brought up a bunch of questions. Number one, well, first up, what were the Bungie employees playing on? Were they playing on PC? Were they playing on console? I actually tweeted this out yesterday. Asked a bunch of people. It hasn't been 100% confirmed, but we're about 99% confirmed that they were playing on PC. Now, they were playing with controllers though, as you saw the PlayStation icons whenever they were like inside of their inventory and stuff, and you of course see them holding a controller. But it looks to be like they were on PC at maybe not maxed out field of view, but my educated guess will be 90 and plus. And just for a point of reference, field of view does play a role in how your reticle looks. As like zooming in, it fattens it up. Hence why something like console here has like a fatter looking reticle, and that's just because you're zoomed in more. Now, all of this was brought up to my attention by my friend QJ, and it actually took us a good hour last night going through a number of screenshots and playbacks from the reveal stream to pretty much come down to this conclusion right here. And that is, we may possibly, just by looking at this reticle change here with controllers on something like PC, we may actually be looking at a hand cannon change coming in Shadowkeep, which will actually align itself with the hand cannon change that happened when going into Rise of Iron back in Destiny 1, which ultimately ran into another buff to hand cannons. And it was kind of a buff, but also simultaneously a nerf. It more or less reined them in, but made them extremely consistent. You see, back then, Destiny 1, we had hand cannons that had immense amount of bloom and terrible initial accuracy. Bungie's way of fixing this was actually in an update, and I can't even remember, I think it was hotfix like 2.5 something, but essentially, initial accuracy on hand cannons were restored to year 1 levels. However, bloom remained in effect at current levels, so that follow-up shots will need to be paced in order to take advantage of this buff. To compensate, base range on high and mid-impact hand cannons was reduced by 5 meters, affecting the drop-off, damage, and aim assist to make long-range shots difficult and less effective. Hand in hand with this adjustment, max range damage was reduced from 50% to 30%, making firefights at a distance an option, but not an effective one. Essentially, guys, back then, if you remember like your vendor roll palindromes or even your god roll IS Lunas, suddenly overnight, getting a max range Pally or IS Luna with rangefinder became extremely important if you still wanted to maintain gunfights in those mid-ranges. But simultaneously, overall, all hand cannons received the benefit of that initial accuracy, which again, guys, it was on year 1 levels and it greatly benefited all hand cannons. So it was a double-edged sword. Hand cannons was more consistent, but simultaneously it had steeper damage fall-off, which of course put hand cannons in the lane that they were designed for. Everything mid-range and less, like short mid-range and less, which was essentially, I think, what, 31 meters? With this reticle change, or what appears to be a reticle change that we saw from this build during the Armor 2.0 reveal stream, we're guessing here that we may possibly be seeing an initial accuracy buff. Now, that is a guess. We don't know that for sure. I got nothing to back it up, nor have I talked to anyone from Bungie. I do find it very strange that PAX was last week week, and Bungie did not have a single hand cannon archetype outside of 110 round per minute hand cannons. In 110s, it's already kind of difficult to see how much bloom those hand cannons are running up against, or even what the initial accuracy really is, because again, the rate of fire of those hand cannons are so slow, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be on target every time. You're not going to be overshooting the parameters that Bungie has placed on that weapon simply because the rate of fire is too slow. It's only when you start dipping into like 140s that it starts to get noticeable, and then it gets extremely noticeable with 150s, which is why console users still have a difficult time using, well, hand cannons in general, but especially 150 round per minute ones, despite 150s being the most dominant archetype of hand cannons here on PC. Now, with a possible buff also comes a possible nerf. Hand cannons are starting to get pretty strong here on PC, so much so that people just go into every single game using some max range hand cannon, normally a spare rations, which does bring up the possibility that a range nerf may be on its way. Now, moving on to Recoil, because Recoil was something that everybody was pointing out. I actually got a number of comments after the Armor 2.0 reveal stream. They said, hey, Lumina looked like it had less recoil. So we broke things down, we analyzed it, we slowed it up, and this was actually during my Lumina review, but from the point of the shot, the initial shot, it took 52 frames for my gun to resettle, meaning the recoil took a whole 52 frames to reallocate itself to its center. Now, when we observed Tomo here, it took him approximately 42 frames for his gun to settle. And it's kind of noticeable. Like, I know that's 10 frames, and people are like, well, what the hell's the difference? It's just 10 frames. It's noticeable. As many times as I've watched back on this clip, it seems like the gun snaps up and back down, even visibly to the eye, quicker. And understand, Tomo is using a controller. I'm using a mouse, so obviously controlling my recoil a little bit is a little easier, as well as snapping from shot to shot. Tomo here is using a controller, and unless he's like a pro at flick shooting, I don't know. He seems to really know how to rein his shot in. Regardless though, just observing it here inside of Premiere and counting the frames, there is what appears to be a 10 frame reduction there in recoil. And if there's one thing that we can say about controller users in general, whether you're on PC or on console, recoil overall, especially for hand cannons, can be toned down a little bit. And considering that Lumina is a 150, this also gives us hope that 150s will be somewhat more usable for controller users. Okay, that's it, guys. That is our hand cannon observation. We could be completely wrong. And if we're wrong, so what? At the end of the day, if there's one thing I hope this video points out, is that there is some issues in terms of recoil, as well as like initial accuracy and bloom for hand cannon users that use controller for both consoles and for PC. So I would not be surprised that in the next quality of life update, we might see an improvement here for our hand cannons overall. How this affects mouse and keyboard users, I have no idea. I would assume not at all, considering that the game immediately recognizes what input you're using and will change accordingly. But I think if they do introduce a range nerf to keep hand cannons sucked down into that mid-range level and lower, yes, that will be a change. Hopefully we'll hear something in the next TWAB. Maybe we'll hear something in the weeks to come. We do have a Sandbox update on its way and lots of Sandbox changes coming in Shadowkeep. Not sure if this hand cannon change would even be a part of that. I'm sure it'll just be part of some sort of quality of life update, but we know for sure that Bungie is working on a number of Sandbox changes that are coming, and hand cannons with its initial accuracy buff and a recoil reduction could be on its way as well. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.